Hello and welcome to another alternate media special. This will be another in our interview series. My guest today is known as Captain DadPool on TikTok. For any of you who follow me on TikTok, definitely give him a follow. He's got some good content. We don't particularly agree on most things, but that's kind of why we're here to interview. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring him on. All right, my man, Captain DadPool,
Hey,
welcome.
here we go. Hey, how's it going, Brad?
It's going pretty good.
Uh,
How's your day been? Has it been had it? Was it a good day? Did you have a good day?
Today's been a good day. It's been productive. I put some shelves up and made some things in the garage and that I've been meaning to do. And so yeah, today's been productive.
Man, work. I was just saying, I've seen in some of your videos
Man,
actually where you do like forging and stuff like that. It looks like
yeah, I'm,
that
I'm a knife, a bladesmith, a knife maker.
that is awesome. Okay, so I've got to ask now.
Yeah, it's
Thoughts on
go for it.
Forged in Fire?
I love the show. There's not really any chance I'll ever be on there. They have a lot of people apply, and I'm an amateur. Like I got pretty good at it pretty fast, but I'm still an amateur, so like I don't see much chance of me going on there. And even if I did, like I have four kids, I'm a stay-at-home dad. Like going away to compete in a show is just not really an option for me. Uh, but it's a great show. I do love it. I'd love to be on it one day, but not in the near future anyway.
Very nice, very nice. Do you do like commission work? Could I like pay you to build me something, to forge me something?
Absolutely. I've
Okay.
I've made and sold a few like custom. That's pretty much exclusively what I deal in is people order like specific, like, oh, I want a kitchen knife. I want it to be this color, this shape, this design. I want the handle to look at this way, and I make it to like their exact specifications. Right now, I'm working on a set of six steak knives. After that, I have a guy who's deploying in October. He wants to have a big knife to deploy with that he can put on his kit. And Another guy wants a karambit. So yeah, like I've got a few orders to fill, and it's fun. I enjoy it.
Very cool. Very cool. So I hinted at it a little bit earlier that we don't necessarily agree on some things, but there are some things I guess where we actually would probably more so agree than disagree, even theologically. Um, so
Yeah,
you are an atheist, and you got that
correct.
way. You got that way or you kind of wandered, not wandered, I don't want to use that word, that's a bad word to use, but you started on that
You could
path
say wandered.
in theological schooling. Is that correct? That's what I've been led to believe.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
that's accurate, more or less.
like what's your faith background? Like where kind of did your faith walk start, and as far as denominationally, kind of what's tell me the story.
Yeah. So growing up, I was only had like mild exposure to religion. Like my parents divorced when I was three. I had like a few stepdads come in, and but my mom had custody of me, and she wasn't particularly religious. Like she believed in God and uh, supernatural, like ghosts and things. But I had grandma who was very religious, who I visited like once every couple of weeks, and she would take me to church. So yeah, I had like basic exposure, and I was baptized when I was little, but I never really would have considered myself a Christian, just because I never really thought about it. When I was 15, I got invited to a youth group, um, and it was a Assemblies of God, which is charismatic Pentecostal. For those of your listeners who don't know, and I really enjoyed it. Like the exposure I had before was I can't remember if it was Methodist or Baptist, but it was at like very like I think it was actually Baptist now that I think about it. Um, but it was as a young kid, it was boring to me. And then as a teenager, I went to this youth group, and there was loud music and strobe lights and fog machines, and everyone was like super happy that I was there. And at the time, I was you starved for social interaction and acceptance and everything. So I got that there, and I was hooked. Um, so I got involved. I got very, very involved. I joined the drama team. I joined the worship band. I played bass guitar for years. I eventually became joined the leadership team, and we had an evangelism team. I went on missions trips, competed in Fine Arts Festival for anybody who knows what that is. Um, so yeah, like I got very like 3 days a week. I was at church, doing different things. I was absolutely obsessed with it, obsessed with the Bible and everything. And quickly got not really quickly, but eventually I got recognized as being I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant, but more dedicated or more serious maybe about my faith and my relationship with God than my peers. So I had a lot of like elders in my church come and like they speak like prophetically over me, which is the thing in Pentecostal churches. And they're like, God has a plan for you. He wants God wants you in ministry. Or like people like I had a vision of you being a pastor, and so like that was like my calling I saw. So I went to college for 2 years, and I eventually couldn't afford to keep going, so I joined the military. Um, Deployed to Iraq, was there for a year. I was an infantryman, got out of the army, and continued my education. But I pretty much had to start all over. Uh, so I was there for another 4 years, graduated, and yeah, when I was one of the first things they tell you in Bible college is forget everything you've ever learned about the Bible from church. Like forget it all. It's probably all wrong. And in my case, like yeah, that turned out to be absolutely true. So after being heavily involved in the church for 10 years, I realized that pretty much everything I'd been told was wrong. And so that was a big struggle for me. One of the big things I brought up is like I was always told that the Gospels were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Like, oh, we have four independent eyewitness accounts of the things that Jesus did that more or less correlate with each other. Like that's why they're reliable. And I was like, okay, I believe it. And then get the Bible college, and I'm like, and that's not really the case. We don't really know who wrote them. And they talk about the inconsistencies in them, and that was like a huge problem for me. That wasn't necessarily a straw that broke the camel's back. But after that, I started learning about like hell, the difference between Sheol, Gehenna, Tartarus, and all that, and like what Jesus actually taught about hell. Like, okay, again, I'd been taught this one thing for 10 years or so. Now I'm learning that's all wrong. And similar story with like Revelation, the end times, the origins of the Old Testament, and some of the like pagan mythologies that it seems to so clearly parallel. I even say is plagiarized from time to time. So at one point, I just looked at my Bible and I was just like, what is this? What is this book even? If everything I've been taught about it is wrong, and we don't actually, there's so much about it that we don't know about. Why am I dedicating my entire life to something that is so like doesn't make so much sense? So my deconstruction, as we call it in the ex-evangelical community, it took like 2 or 3 years. Like during that period, one belief kind of falls after the other, and then you reach a point where you just can't do it anymore. And for me, and for a lot of others, you kind of like backslide into your beliefs. Like there was a point where I got genuinely scared. Like I felt I had this very close relationship with God. He was always there with me, and suddenly I felt like he wasn't there anymore. So I started praying more. I started reading my Bible more. I started listening to Christian themed music more. Like I tried very hard to hold on to that faith. And eventually it just kind of like ended. And I couldn't believe anymore. It's not because I didn't want to. Like again, I tried very hard to continue my beliefs. But I often describe it as like my brain chemistry just changed. Like it wasn't something I chose to do. It's just something that kind of happened to me. I just stopped believing against my own will, even. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
You said something there it's funny. It's it's something I've been rolling around in my own head here, because of certain discussions that I've gotten into. You mentioned, almost having a change of belief almost against your will. So, would you say that belief is something that we choose, or not?
Mm, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I could give you an answer one way or the other.
Right. It's
Is it something that we choose?
because the way that I typically have the way it makes sense to me, kind of, is that you are either convinced of something, or you're not. And so, if you are convinced of it, it's not a conscious choice that you're making to be convinced of it. You simply are, or you simply are not.
Yeah.
And so I guess my answer as of now would be that no, we don't choose our beliefs in that aspect. It's not a conscious choice because we're convinced of what we're convinced of. But I kind of wanted your thoughts on that because
Yeah.
I figured you might also have a pretty unique view on that. Like I said, it's something I'm still working out in my head.
No, that's a great way you put it. It's as simple as that. We're convinced of what we're convinced of. Like at the time, for the longest time, I was convinced of this one truth, and then those my worldview on those truths that I had been convinced of changed, and I became no longer convinced of them. Um, so yeah, I think that's a fair way to say it.
So, I've been curious actually. What college did you go to?
I went to the University of Valley Forge. It's in Phoenixville,
Oh
Pennsylvania.
wow, nice,
It's a sister. It's like a sister college of Liberty University.
nice. Okay,
It's like
yeah, that
smaller, but it's affiliated with.
that makes sense. And I know they
Yeah.
actually have really great programs. My colleague here at Alternate Media, Seamus, he's a Liberty guy also. Um,
Oh, is he?
he's
I follow him too on TikTok, actually.
Yeah, he's very particularly history is the subject of specialty for him. He also took theological classes and whatnot, but he was going for a history major. As I recall, like the only thing he's got left to do is to actually like go do a dig. Do actual archaeological research, and then he'll be done with
Oh,
his
like ours.
degree.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Okay.
and I
Yeah,
think that'll happen soon. I think.
that'd be. I'd love to do that. My the requirement for me is I had to write a thesis. Um, there's other majors where you have to do an internship or something, but for my particular major, I had to write a 40 plus page paper on a particular topic, and so that's what I had to do,
Wow.
which
So
was fun, but no fun at the same time.
right, right, because it's monotonous. Even if you're fascinated with it, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh
so
yeah. Oh yeah.
while you were at college, and this is kind of just a subject of personal fascination for me because I've
Sure.
had conversations with certain people who were also at Christian colleges, uh, Pensacola Christian College to be precise, where
Oh yeah. Mm.
we had gotten into a dispute about the origin of the Christian holidays, and what I was presenting was being called into question, because I'm of the opinion that they have deeply rooted pagan origins, Christmas and Easter and what have you. Um, and
Mhm.
so they really didn't believe me until they spoke to a couple of the pastoral students that were there at PCC, and when they asked the pastoral students, they're like, "Oh yeah." um, so is that something that you learned, kind of while you were in college? Is it something that was discussed? Is like the origin of the holidays, or was that avoided, or?
As far as the holidays, not really. Um, but what we did like touch on is like the Epic of Gilgamesh and like the Enuma Elish, and then Ur Papyra and like things like that. And in the Book of Enoch, even like we talked about those things, which would probably is similar to the holiday origins. But yeah, my classes never really touched on the holidays,
Interesting.
not that I can remember.
Is that something that you've ever put research into?
Yeah, like I had known like well into my Christianity, like these traditions were essentially taken from pagan holidays. That was never really a problem for me. It was always like, oh well, the truth became realized, and like God like reformed the holidays or whatever. But then looking even deeper into it, and then you realize um, like for example, Easter, which we just had. The day of Christ's resurrection, like researching that, and like the Council of Nicaea had like heavy debates about what date that was at, and like the date got changed. And so I'm like, if this was the date that Christ was risen, like there would have been no debate. Like that would have been universally agreed upon. But
Right.
they struggled with where to place that, and so that's something that was like, that's weird. That's not something that was taught in. Bible college is still it'll mildly introduce you to things that you were not introduced to in Bible college, but it still maintains its own echo chamber. It won't expose you to certain things.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, while in Bible college, because so you did mention that you looked into a bit of the authorship of the New Testament, and even the Old Testament, the method of preservation and whatnot. Um,
Mhm.
how how exposed were you to um, other I guess Judaic sources of literature like the Talmud and whatnot?
Yeah, we did touch upon that. Of course, we talked about like Christian history was not something they shied away from, and Judaic history. That's definitely something that was talked about fairly comfortably. But the teaching at the end of the day was, oh, Jesus came and he brought the new covenant. So they had no problem teaching the old covenant, but with a certain understanding that Jesus came and changed it all. Um, yeah,
Yep.
I'm sure you have a
Familiar
lot
with
to
that.
say about that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's I think we could have actually a fascinating conversation with that. The theism, atheism aside, I think just because you have a theological background and study, that we could probably have a really fascinating conversation on that and probably find a level of agreement,
I think so.
at least on that level. So while in college, I completely understand the level of struggle that there is in learning that kind of stuff. It's actually something Seamus told me, that the theological students at Liberty told him, is that the more you look into theology, the more of a struggle it causes for one's faith. Um, what do you think probably was the biggest, like the heaviest weight to kind of bear as far as your theological understanding? What's the subject that kind of stuck out the most as being the most problematic?
Um, Aside from the authorship of the Gospels and the origins of the Old Testament, a big part of it was apologetics. I took an apologetics class, and I became like, that tied in well with my theology interest, and I got to a point where I was like, I actually wanted to be able to debate atheists. I became pretty obsessed with Dr. William Lane Craig. I own most of his books. I read most of them. And so like I wanted to be able to debate atheists the same way that he does. And by doing so, like I watched a lot of his debates, and I saw him debate like Christopher Hitchens, and that exposed me to like Richard Dawkins. Like I read The God Delusion, which isn't one of my favorite books, by the way, not by a long shot. But that exposed me to that side of the argument, which I previously had never been exposed to. And so I started listening to like more like philosophical points, scientific points, um, historical points that yeah, I'd never really heard of before. And so it was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. And they're saying like it doesn't make sense that an omniscient God would operate this way. That Jesus dying on the cross is just God sending himself to die for himself to save us from himself. Like, why would omniscient God need to create such an elaborate system? And like, that makes sense to me. Like, that's something I never heard of before. So yeah, at one point I started questioning the omniscience of God and the omnitemporalness of God. You know, if God exists at all times, in all places, in all realities, like he would know exactly what the outcome would be of any situation, but he still goes through with it. He still changes his mind from time to time. He still wipes out entire tribes of people in order to bring humanity as a whole back to him. And so all of it started to just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's another big thing that I struggle with in the midst of everything. So a lot of it was, yeah, just one thing piled on top of another that ultimately led to me just ceasing to believe what I'd believed so firmly for the past 10 plus years.
I gotcha. You mentioned William Lane Craig, which he's not exactly my favorite, particularly because of just natural doctrinal differences that he and I have. But it made me think. You said you watched some of his debates. Did you happen to see the debate he did with Rabbi Tovia Singer? It was.
Oh, I don't think I did.
Yeah, they were kind of. I guess the main
The
subject
name
of the
sounds
debate
familiar. But...
would be the Trinity. And believe it or not,
Oh,
Rabbi
oh.
Tovia Singer got him to basically concede that it cannot be proven from the Old Testament alone. It's a pretty
Oh,
interesting
no, it
debate to
couldn't.
watch.
Wait, I
um,
have to write that. You said Rabbi Toby and Singer?
Tovia Singer, yep. Tovia and then Singer, spelled exactly like you know.
Toby Singer. Yeah, I might have to look that up. I still watch debates to this day, just as for funsies, I guess. I don't know. Like whenever I do yard work or housework, I usually put a debate on in my headphones.
Right.
So that's still something I really enjoy, and also helps me stay on top of things.
Yep. I
But
do.
yeah, I want to definitely check that out.
I do the same. Tovia Singer he is what is called an anti-missionary. His goal and his purpose is to combat Christian apologetics with the purpose of
So is he
main. He's a Jew. He's an Orthodox Jew, but he does what he does for the purposes of keeping those who would missionize Jews and try and convert them to Christianity. He's trying to keep those Jews in the fold, if you get what I mean.
so so not really an inclusivist, but
No, not really an
is it
inclusivist, but he's trying to protect Judaism by protecting it from Christian missionaries, if that makes sense.
no, yeah, that's kind of on par to what was it, the Midianites, um, the early Christian or second century early Christian groups. That's kind of how they were.
The
They accepted Jesus as as a teacher, but they wanted to maintain the Jewish traditions,
You mean
and they rejected Paul entirely because
the
it's the
Ebionites?
Ebionites. Am I getting them
Yes.
mixed up?
Yep.
Yeah, you're right.
The
You're right. Yeah,
Ebionites.
okay, my bad.
Yeah, that's it.
Anyways, yeah, they rejected Paul entirely because for that reason.
Yeah, they interesting group actually because they apparently according to Papias, you probably know this already, but Papias states that they had a Hebrew Gospel of Matthew that they utilized, and one of the unique things about that Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, as far as Eusebius is concerned, is that it was absent a virgin birth narrative. So, like,
Yeah,
super
the first two
interesting.
chapters are in
Right,
it.
right,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
there are other inconsistencies that the narrative kind of presents. Um, but anyway,
So
kind
then,
of to go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. I wanted to ask, like, so then what is your position on the on the virgin birth to put you on the on the shoot here.
That's actually something that I'm currently looking into. I did have an article sent to me that I read over, and it made a lot of sense. I was at a position for a while, having read through. You read through the chapter 1 of Matthew, and it really doesn't implicitly involve a virgin birth per se. In other words, it's not explicitly stated, but it is presupposed based on the
Yeah.
wording that's used in certain areas. So my idea has always been that at the very least, if God miraculously transported seed from Joseph into Mary's womb, then it's still a virgin birth and a miraculous birth, but Joseph's marriage has not been violated, because that would be
Yeah.
a contingent scenario there. If the idea of God violating Joseph's marriage in order to bring about the Messiah creates its own list of problems. And also the problem of the Messiah not actually being able to be the Messiah if he's not of the line of David, and that has to come through the father, because the
Yeah.
Jewish identity comes through the mother, but tribal inheritance comes through the father. So one way or another, Joseph
Yeah.
would actually have to be Jesus' father.
Yeah, which is a big reason that the earliest Christian groups did not believe in the virgin birth. They believed that Jesus was a little man who was anointed by God at some point during his ministry, either uh, during his death on the cross, or the his baptism by John,
Yep.
or his turning the water into wine at the party
Right.
at his mother Mary's request. Yeah, there's these different theories about when that happened, but that is the earliest. That is the debate among the earliest Christians: is when was this human person anointed by God? It was never he was God from the beginning. Like that was a later idea,
Right. And
which is fascinating to me.
it's one. A matter of fact, I'll probably send you the article because I know you'll enjoy it regardless, or maybe you've already read it.
Yeah, please do.
But one of the things it points out, and this was one of the things that really stuck out, is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I never saw that. But it was it pointed out a few examples of occurrences where it's like, okay, well, somebody who was aware of the status of his birth, if it really was a virgin birth, would not have reacted to this statement this way, namely his mother, because she's the one who bore him, right? So it brought up like the example
Mhm.
of when he's like 12 years old in the temple, and he gets lost, and they find him in the temple discussing with the elders, and he tells
I
them,
was doing my father's work.
didn't you know I must be doing my father's work? And they're all like, what the heck is he talking
Yeah.
about? It's like, okay, this statement should not have been confusing to them if they understood the status of his birth being what it was. It's like, this really shouldn't be a confusing
Yeah,
statement. And that was really
that's a
kind of
great point.
that was a moment where it's like, okay, I really probably should step back and actually examine the whole of that, because that's true. Like, that shouldn't have been a confusing statement. But
Yeah, it's sorry, I got distracted. My cats are playing with each other behind me.
oh, nice. I was
It's
just saying
super
I can see
distracting.
them back there. um,
Yeah,
so
they're having fun. They're having a good time.
so while in college, I guess did you start to have, was it in college that you started to have questions and kind of I guess a crisis of faith, if, as it were?
Yeah, it's weird because like I mentioned, I did 2 years of Bible college before I joined the military. And then when I joined the military, and I was an infantryman, which means I was on the front lines. I went outside the wire, as we call it, every single day, and I saw a lot of things that the average Americans, the average Christian, does not see. Um, and so that probably started some issues with me. Um, but I still visited the chaplain. And when I got out, obviously went back to Bible college. I got involved in another church that was close to the college. I joined the drama team there, and I joined the worship band in that church. And I was good friends with the youth pastor, and I helped in his. I was in his leadership team, for 4 more years. So like I had these like these struggles of like perspective, maybe because like my perspective had changed, not necessarily my knowledge or my theology, but my perspective had kind of changed.
Premise.
And then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
theology and and the historical understanding like kind of preceded that, and the apologetics, and so yeah, is like I said earlier, it's like one thing piled on top of the other. So yeah, I'd say it's fair to say it's that's an area where it started.
What was the reaction you received from like the Christian friends and family that you have?
So I lost contact with most of my Christian family and friends. I don't really have any. The only Christian family I have is like my aunts. My grandma had dementia for the past like 4 years, and she just died a couple months ago. Um, and but the rest of my family is just like my. I have crazy aunts and uncles that are hardcore Republican, like just as right wing as you can imagine, who claim they're Christian also. Like I don't talk to them at all. So I could care less. So family, I didn't really deal with that. But friends, I had one friend I was close to. I recently discovered she also deconstructed, and she became like some kind of Wiccan. I'm not really sure. Um, but another friend I was close with, a married couple who are friends of mine. Um, they try to stay in contact with me fairly regularly. He actually sent me the book "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist" by Frank Turek, and he was like, "Just read this, all right? Just please read this." And I wasn't even militant about my atheism back then. Like I made a couple of like subtle posts on Facebook, but I wasn't on TikTok or anything doing all that. I was just made general things. But he deduced that from that, and he just like, hey, can I send you this book? Will you read it if I do? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I read it, and then he asked me a couple months, like, hey, did you read it? What did you think? And I was like, you really want to know what I think? It's not convincing at all. Um, and one thing I pointed out is like at towards the end of the book, he has this like pretend dialogue where he is arguing or debating himself, who's pretending to be an atheist. He's like, this is what I would think an atheist would respond to this question I would give him. So it's a one-sided argument. And I'm like, if he was asking the same questions to me or any other like atheist who had some sort of education, they would not be answering them this way. So that was a big like turn off for me. So I told him all that, and he was like, "Oh yeah, well I get that how people can be biased, blah blah." But he still tries to reach out to me. He's still trying to like convert me back into Christianity, and I'm just like, you don't get it. But he's someone who tried to take his own life, and was not successful, and he attributes that to God's plan that he had for his life. Like God didn't allow me to kill myself because of his plan. So he's like absolutely on an emotional level, 100% convinced. So I'm like, I yeah, a lot to say there, but
Well,
I'll wrap it up there.
that brings up a question. Actually, is that something that you would say you notice kind of abounds in Christianity? Is almost an emotional reaction slash attachment to a lot of the traditions and doctrines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much to say there. Um, I think a big part of it is it's a social survival mechanism, and I have experience in this. Like this is the group I found acceptance in, so I invested myself 100% into this group. Didn't really think outside of that group. Didn't really think outside of what that group taught. I just bought into it wholly until I was exposed to other teachings, and I wasn't so much a part of that group. Um, and and yeah, a lot of evidence that Christians present is anecdotal. And for them, it's very real. And I get that. I genuinely do. Like, I remember when I was a Christian, I'm like, oh, I had this encounter with God, or God answered this prayer, or he blessed me in this way. I was struggling financially, and then I got some money I wasn't expecting, or um, I asked God for a sign and he gave it to me, or whatever. Like, it's all anecdotal, but at the end of the day, you're just kind of like, or once you start asking questions like this, all just experiential. It's anecdotal. It's coincidence. It's not evidence that um, God is actually trying to prove that he's real, because at the same time, like, even though God may have saved my life, how many people in the hospital did God not save? And surely those people were being prayed for by their devout loved ones. God chose not to save them, so why did he save me? Why did he save, I have a child who was who almost didn't make it, um but he did, and that was part of my, like, going back, like, oh God, thank you so much for saving my child. And I'm like, oh wait, there's all these babies who don't make it, who don't make it in utero, they don't make it through the delivery, and after they're born, sudden infant death syndrome, their parents just wake up and they find their baby dead in their crib. Like why is that a thing? Why was my kid saved, but none of these other kids are? So that was a part of the struggle for me. So it was like, this anecdotal experiential evidence doesn't work for me anymore after thinking about it from that angle. Sorry if I rambled a little bit
Oh
there,
no, no, no,
but
no. You're good. It is definitely one of the age old philosophical questions of why bad things happen to good people. Um,
yeah.
so I what because you've been on TikTok for a little while and gotten a fair amount of notoriety there. um,
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very unexpected, by the way.
what is what's the general reaction that you get from Christians on TikTok and social media and whatnot?
So there's multiple. It's hard to say that one outweighs the other. I get the typical Christians that are just like, oh, you have fun burning in hell. And like even like when I was a Christian, I would have rebuked those Christians.
Right.
Um, and then I get people who are like, who do the no true Scotsman thing. You were never really a real Christian, or you didn't pray the right way. You didn't think the right thing. They try to like dissect and psychoanalyze my deconstruction process. Like, you just didn't do it right. Um, and then I have other Christians who like try to offer like arguments without being so condemning. And then I have guys like you and Thinking Christian is another one, who try to spark up like a genuine dialogue about these things. So I would say like you're probably in the minority there. Um,
That's terrible.
but it's just sadly, and I,
I mean
but
I
yeah, there's not very many Christians. Go ahead.
no, 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 go you. This is your interview.
Okay. No, no, I was just reiterating, like there's not a lot of Christians who want to have like a genuine dialogue
Hmm.
about the things I have to say. Like I can come off as abrasive and stoic and aggressive sometimes. I try not to be, but sometimes I can't help it. I'm human. Um, but every now and then, yeah, like I guess someone like you or Thinking Christian or Pastor John at one point, who's like, hey, I want to have an actual conversation about this, which I super appreciate. Like that's the kind of dialogue I think we need more of, which is why I'm
Certainly.
I'm all too willing to come on your show and chat about it, even though we distinctly disagree about core things.
I mean, and I appreciate it so much that you've been willing to come on. I think dialogue is probably the most important thing we can have about anything that we disagree on, because my philosophy has been, and kind of the goal of this ministry is to help bring some level of unity to what is currently Christianity by pointing out the things that cause division, disagreement, and igniting that dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, where there's a dispute, probably most of us are wrong, but somebody's right somewhere, and the correct answer can only be come to if you actually do have a dialogue about it. You know, so
Yeah,
I see value in it.
I appreciate that. I really do.
Absolutely.
Um,
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, man. But I guess
Oh, I'm good.
on the note of what I just what I just said, what are some of the things that you think probably the church needs to get itself sorted out if it wants to be taken more seriously by the outside world? Because one of the things I've always said is like, look, the main reason Christianity can't be taken seriously is because there is a different church of a different denomination on every street corner. And
Yeah.
so what are if you could have like a top three, like you guys need to sort these three things out if you want to be taken seriously, what
Ooh.
would those be?
That's a good, put me on the spot here. Um, what was you just said a second ago? Um, I think Christian Christians or Christianity will not be taken seriously so long as they continue to take themselves too seriously. There's so much dogmatism about their theology, their ideology. There's very little humility. There's very little, hey, I don't know the answer to this. It's one complaint I have. Like atheists like to bring up like slavery or whatever, or the genocide or whatever have you in the Old Testament. And I've made a video about this before. It's like I would be totally fine if a Christian would be like, I don't know why this happened. I don't know why God thought this was okay. I believe there's a reason. I just don't know it. But literally nobody is saying that. Instead, there's people trying to justify slavery, trying to justify genocide. Um, but there's very little people who are unsure of those things. And that shows an unwillingness to ask the difficult questions about their own faith. So I think the more Christians can do that, the better, or the more denominations can do that, the better. Um, there's so many answers I want to give, but at the same time, it's hard to narrow down. It's a struggle with like progressive Christianity. Um, that's another one. Progressive Christianity was not really a thing when I was a Christian. That's a pretty like modern
Very new.
movement. Trying to, yeah, it's very new. It's very out of nowhere. Like it's all these people trying to reconcile their faith with the secular world, and part of me is like that doesn't work. Like if
Right.
you want to adhere to the teachings of the scripture, you can't be progressive and be Christian. Like you can't. Sorry. You can say like I disagree with your lifestyle, but I still love you. Like you can say that, sure, and we can have that argument. But to say that, oh, the Bible doesn't actually teach that homosexuality is against God, like no, it does. It really does. Sorry. Um, and it's weird because there's a lot of like my fellow atheists who like try to point that out, like, oh, the Bible's not this 1982 or 84 or whatever, 86, whatever movie that's coming out, and they're like, oh, the Bible, like, no, you're wrong. Shut up, you're wrong.
Right.
But it's you. So you have two extremes. You have one group who tries to justify it, and you have one group who tries to explain it away or pretend it's not there entirely, when there's nobody in the middle, or at least no one in the middle who's speaking out. There's no one saying, I don't know the answers. I don't know. Sorry. Which is kind of the same way atheists do. Like, I don't know how the universe came to be. It just did. I don't have the answers for you. Like, if they could take the same, like, non-ontological stance on certain things, I think that would be a good place to start. Um,
You said something there.
Another thing is,
Oh, go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. You go ahead. You go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, yeah,
This will
yeah.
probably turn into another rant. So if you have
Go
something you
ahead. Go
wanna,
ahead. I
okay.
love rants.
Being more knowledgeable about the Bible is also a huge thing. Like I alluded to earlier, the doctrine of hell. Like I said, people will come into my comments and be like, "Oh, you'll learn on Judgment Day when you're burning in hell for all eternity." And I'm like, that's not what the Bible teaches. It's not at all. If you understood what the Bible actually teaches hell is about, you would not be saying that. So I think if churches could be more educationally focused on key concepts like that, that would be very helpful. Because those people are only saying those things because that's what they've been taught. They didn't come up with those ideas on their own out of nothing. They were taught those things. Like, so if Christians and churches and pastors could teach what is actually accurate in the Bible, then that would be a huge stepping stone as well. But a big problem with that is people enjoy that sort of judgmental dogmatism. That's what they enjoy about the gospel, about the Bible, about the church. It gives them some sense of superiority. It gives them some feeling of control, what have you. So, like, those people should be weeded out. And I don't know
Right.
how that would work, but like those people either need to be corrected if they're unwilling to accept the correction, be weeded out,
Yep.
and the churches need to be like, I'm not worried about the numbers. I don't care how many people are sitting in our pews. This is what the truth is. If you don't
Right.
accept it, bye. We don't need your tithes. So if the church could be more firm about the objective reality of the Bible and the Gospels and the church history and doctrine and theology, and be less compromising to those people who want to use it in a more dogmatic, controlling manner, that would be epic. Like, that would just be, yeah, a
That
huge stepping stone, I think.
that actually is something that is I would love to actually just sit and kind of explain in summary my theology and where it differs from Christianity to you, and go kind of blow by blow, verse by verse, and just kind of see if at least in your mind it clicks as being a more consistent theology, based on what the Bible actually says. Because you're absolutely right. There are things that the Bible doesn't say that we are taught, and it's a lot of it is just based on presupposition. One of the things actually that I've had several discussions about recently, being like Ezekiel 28 and Genesis 3 being about Satan. Whereas, like, the only reason we assume that Ezekiel 28 is about Satan is because of a mention of this being in the Garden of Eden, and so then we go to Genesis 3 where we already have a presupposition that the serpent is Satan, when that can't actually be substantiated from the text in either case. So Satan, the
Mm-hmm.
figure of Satan, actually biblically, as it's taught, is something different from what the Bible actually says in these examples. But one other thing you mentioned is the church's level of self-importance, and that's something that I actually have experienced myself. Also, I'll get questions or even challenges sometimes when I'm in a dispute with someone about what the Jews think about Christians in this aspect, and it's like, dude, like, they don't even waste their time thinking about you. Like, they don't care. Like, it's like you are much more
Yeah,
important to yourself than you are to the Jewish people. They genuinely do not care, because they believe what they believe, and that's all that
that's
matters.
so true.
They don't have to worry about what you believe. But yeah, I get that attitude a lot, and it's kind of one of those where it's like, all right, maybe just like calm down a little bit. Let's just accept that other people believe other things, and not everybody is like hell bent on destroying Christianity. Maybe other people just believe other things, and it's
Yeah.
really just as simple as that. And I think that's probably one of the things that needs to be accepted, before a dialogue could happen. You know.
Yeah. And I don't imagine, it's hard to imagine that ever becoming a reality,
Well,
which is sad to say because I think that would be the healthiest, most progressive route. But I don't foresee that happening. And I don't know what needs to change in order for it to happen. I don't have all the answers.
right.
Um, yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe you and I can kind of be the start of that. Maybe that's why we do what we do on TikTok in the first place. Um, one
Yeah.
last question, because this is something I've noticed, just in my experience, which is arbitrary at best, because admittedly, I don't like go out and just meet atheists everywhere. But of the ones that I have met in my experience throughout life, there are some that I have found have turned to more of a. It's like they've kind of tended towards Eastern mysticism now. It's like atheism kind of just was a phase that led into a more Eastern mystic type philosophy. Is that something that you've experienced, or is that just my arbitrary limited experience?
No, you're right. And personally, that's something I struggle with. Um, because yeah, there's a lot of like my atheist friends who like fully wholly subscribe to a mythicist point of view. And I'm here like I've read Richard Carrier, I've read Robert Price. Like I get their perspective, I really do, and they might be right. But I've also read like Bart Ehrman and I can't remember his name now. Some other historians who believe in a historical Jesus, and I'm like I'm not a mythicist. I'm an on the fenceist. Like I haven't decided one way or the other which way I lean, and that's okay. Um, but yeah, I do have like some people that I would consider friends that we interact with on a regular basis who are like, "Oh, Jesus never existed, like completely. There's no way he existed." And I'm like, "There's a very strong possibility he did." Um, so yeah, I think actually Bart Ehrman has a quote that he's kind of infamous for, by saying that mythicists do themselves a disservice by saying that the historical Jesus never existed because of how many early um, uh, a testament that there is to his existence and what he did. And there's a part of me that agrees with that. So yeah, I think, and actually I have my own podcast and I was on there yesterday with Atheist Jesus, ironically,
Nice, J Mike.
and we had a similar conversation. Yeah, J Mike, yeah, um, we had a similar conversation about all this, and oh my god, I just drew a blank. What were we talking about? Um,
Mythicism.
we're like, yeah, we're like people in the atheist community. There's a lot of people in the atheist community who they make atheism their entire personality. Like that is who they are. That's they wear the atheist shirts. They have the atheist bumper sticker on their car. Like they've made it a core part of their identity. Um, and I'm like that's the same thing a lot of Christians do.
Yes.
They make Christianity part of their core identity. Like it's two sides of the same coin here. Like there has to be some sort of yeah compromise, dialogue, on mutual understanding, in order for any progress to be made. Because otherwise, you're just manning your own battle stations.
Right.
Like that's all you're doing. You're not willing to negotiate. You just want to fight. Um,
Right.
so I think both sides could do better at that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially, it's funny. I do have a pretty close family friend of mine. Actually, he was my older brother's like closest friend growing up. That he did kind of go into atheism. But he is one that actually he has made it part of his identity, because anytime that he and I do have chance to have a dialogue, it gets pretty hostile pretty quick, and it's
Yeah.
it's just kind of sad, because I can tell that for him at this point, because it's what he associates himself with, that he would feel like he has no identity left if he didn't have that. And so my heart
Yeah.
really goes out to him. I almost want to introduce him to you guys, just so at least not not to speak poorly of him, but definitely there's a lot he could learn from other atheists like you guys.
Oh yeah, there's tons of people like that. Like even people that I consider friends. I'm like, dude, you need to chill out a little bit. And, and I've gone after atheists a few times on my page for doing just that, or for saying that Horus is identical to Jesus. And like, no, it's fucking not. Stop saying that. Stop saying that. That's stupid. That's wrong. Stop saying that.
Right. It's that whole
But
zeitgeist
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Oh, the number of people who are like, you need to watch, because I've never seen Zeitgeist. Like, I'm
Oh
not a big
man.
conspiracy theorist person. I've had so many people tell me, you need to watch that movie. I'm like, I don't want to. Sounds like conspiracy theory. I'm not into that. I'd rather read something written by a historian.
So, not just to add to the list, but like at the very least for comedic value, you need to watch that movie.
Yeah, that's another part of me is like, I've had so many people tell me that I need to watch them. Like, there's something to this. I need to see what everybody is talking about, because no one else is recommending I watch any movie. But there are dozens of people saying I need to watch this movie. I'm like, there's got to be something to it. I need to just bite the bullet and watch it and see what all the rage is about.
It's funny actually. I remember when
Yeah.
that first came out, it actually caused because I was actually still in a independent fundamental Baptist Christian church when it first came out. And I remember the rift it was causing in Christianity at the time. Like, that was all over Christian, radio stations and whatnot, like how horrible this movie was, the crisis of faith it was causing in people. And so, my dad's always been the type who wanted to make sure that I at least could present some kind of an answer. And so he would expose me to things that, like videos by Richard Dawkins and other such atheists and whatnot, and just be like, all right, well, prove him wrong, and so he put it on, and he was like, all right, we're gonna sit and we're gonna watch through this, and we're gonna go bit by bit on exactly what is incorrect about it. And it's baffling to me how many people just accepted it without researching the historical claims made.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, people don't like research.
Yeah,
It's the world
I
we
might
live
have
in.
to just sit. It's true. It's true. Like, all the information that they, fits into their confirmation bias is fed to them via Facebook group that's posted by their crazy aunt or uncle. Yeah, that people make no effort into to learning. They just accept whatever's given to them.
Yeah.
It's a very lucrative market. It's very upsetting, but it's the reality of the world we live in.
Well, I thank you so much for agreeing to come on and have a conversation with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
Me too.
Go ahead, plug your TikTok and your podcast and whatnot. Tell us where to find you.
Yeah, I'm primarily on TikTok. If you find me on TikTok, you can. There's a link tree in my bio that has. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, and I have a YouTube that I do a show every Thursday. I do a live Q&A with my co-host Crimson Barrel. He's a mythology expert, and Sundays we have a guest on, usually from TikTok. Which, by the way, I'd like to have you on in the future.
Oh, fantastic! I'd love that.
If you yeah, I'd love to do that. I think our schedule stretches out pretty far right now, but in the near future, I'll definitely reach out to you and try to get you on the books. Because we have a couple of Christians on already. I think we have Thinking Christian on in a couple of weeks.
Very cool.
So I want to have you on too, because we don't want to seem like we're just another echo chamber podcast. But yeah, we do that. I have a Discord. I'm kind of everywhere except Facebook, it seems like. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Nobody blames you.
I have too many crazy family members on Facebook. That's like, Facebook is becoming like the QAnon site. I don't know what to make of it anymore. I avoid it altogether.
QAnon, man. Wow. Truth.
Yeah, that's just me. I have family members who are legit a part of that. Like a lot of them.
Oh,
I'm just
wow.
like, I'm just done. I'm done. Bye. There's nothing for me here.
Right, right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I guess wrap this up. Everyone at home, thank you for watching. Definitely, if you're on TikTok, go and follow Captain DadPool and look into his YouTube page and his podcast. And as always, I hope this has blessed everyone. Shalom.